Score Rosenberg podcast coming to you live and direct from the lab. We're kicking back on a wonderful crisp. And let me tell you guys, crisp is an understatement. I want to give everybody a shout out for tuning to the last show and checking that out. It was a wonderful, wonderful piece we did. But tonight is going to be epic. As I normally tell you, tonight is going to be epic. Let me slow things down. You can check us out on our YouTube channel, SQR Podcast. Or as a matter of fact, just Google SQR Podcast, or if you even feel better, Score Rosenberg Radio. Check us out. You'll see everything that we're doing. Subscribe to everything because it's all positive, educating, inspiring, and trust me, entertaining stuff that's there. Tonight, I want to take this moment to give a big shout out to everybody that's in the house. Everybody who bear the cold to come out and say, listen, we got to get this one done, because tonight on Dr. Martin Luther King's anniversary, 50th anniversary actually, of his assassination, we're in the house to do something special tonight. So right now, big shout out to Manny behind the camera. Thank you so much for being here. Big shout out to my boy Charles holding us down. Big shout out to Cheese in the house. Thank you, my friend, for holding us down. Ellie and Nikki, thank you so much for being here. And ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are honored and blessed to have the illustrious Councilman Michael Jackson. Thank you so much for being here, sir. I really appreciate you for being
brother,
here tonight.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm excited, especially with that type of intro.
Well, you're
ready to roll.
Your energy was definitely felt when you walked into the space, and we need somebody of your swagger, for the lack of a better term, to implement the changes. And I'm really honored that you're here to really share and build and really understand and be a part of the SQR podcast production.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate the platform. First and foremost, this is a very impactful election that's coming up this election season. Whoever is the next mayor is either going to change the city or is going to take us further into the abyss of the black hole.
Ooh.
And we prefer the first, of course, but it's going to be a very important election. So with that being said, my ultimate job is to educate people as much as possible. And what better way to do it in a platform such as this? Okay. And reach the audience that that I'm hoping would be receptive to being educated.
Bong, right out the bat, Jules. There's a lot of information we're going to get into tonight. And the way we always do the show is, we dig into the past. We get micro, you can get macro sometimes, to find out what were the ingredients that were in the pot that made you who you are right now, that influenced you on this journey to be making the impact you're doing. So let's just go back to the beginning. Parents, grandparents, everybody originally from the U.S.?
Everyone, as far as I know, is originally from the U.S. My grandparents on my mother's side is actually originate from the islands, from Puerto Rico. And both my parents grew up here in Paterson in projects on different sides of the town. So my mother grew up in Christopher Columbus projects. My father grew up in Alabama projects. And, we School of Hard Knocks, man.
So to give people a little reference point, you mentioned these projects. So, Paterson itself geographically, where's Christopher Columbus? where's those projects located so people can have a reference point?
Well, they're on opposite sides of the city. In fact, the Christopher Columbus projects was just no longer there. It was on Temple Street, Matlock Street. It's on the what would be considered the northern side of the city. So they call that the north side.
So how did they? Normally, because people from the north side don't really hang out with people from. Correct, right? Is that the understanding?
No, that's absolutely correct. Never really had a full conversation about how that the synergy came together, but. Hey, I'm grateful.
Nice.
I'm grateful.
So I'm curious because, knowing that dynamic, I wondered how they met. Did you ever find out the story of how your mom and your dad met?
No, well, you know what? The beauty of their relationship, they were both very young. So it was a young, innocent relationship. They both experienced, they were both from large families.
Okay.
So my father I'm sure he was a few years older than my mother. I'm sure he's getting around town. Saw this nice looking young lady and try to,
stood no chance.
Exactly. And he's a Michael Jackson too. So I'm the junior
Michael Jackson.
So I don't know if he used the Michael Jackson swagger at that point, but we can assume so.
Nice. So they met, and the family makeup, what was that like? How many brothers, sisters? What was that dynamic like?
Well, from their families, they both came from large families. My mother had there's a total of 8 of them.
Okay.
4 boys, 4 girls.
Okay.
And my father's family, there's a total of 6, 3 girls, 3 boys, and the luck of the draw on that. But both, coming from a family there was a lot of uncles and aunts. That means there was a lot of cousins, and
the extended family was pretty big.
The extended family was pretty big, pretty close. We all very close.
What was your family like? That little unit.
I think my parents probably didn't enjoy growing up in a household with so many children, because it was just me and my brother. And they stopped it there. So
so 2.
But it's just 2 of us.
Nice. You're the oldest?
I'm the oldest. So we both grew up in Paterson. We both educated locally here in Paterson. We both
went to the I don't want to use notorious, but the high school here, Eastside High School.
Eastside High School. Well, I was a freshman going into Eastside, and then my father had purchased a house on the other side of town, so I transferred right away into Kennedy. So I was an East Side guy, slated to go to East Side, football player.
Oh wow!
And then we wound up going to the other side of town.
So I think you're zipping way too fast through the story, because I want to slow down, because you said you were a football player in high school.
Football player in high school that was my vehicle through those years. Kept me grounded, kept me interested in going to school on a daily basis. It kept me involved, helped me get to know different people in the community, and ultimately was my ticket to college, to further my education and things, and be able to come back and make a contribution to the city.
Why so receptive to the structure and discipline that comes from that? Because what I'm trying to get to is, I'm pretty sure you're surrounded with a lot of young men in the same age group who were distracted and not as focused as you were. So I'm trying to get to, what was that reasoning behind you being so focused through that time? Was it something you saw mom did or dad did, or what was that about?
No, well, my parents were very involved, and to their credit, being young, they had their fair share of challenges. They made a number of mistakes. But throughout those years, one of them was strong when needed to be, and my father always had a strong presence, and there was no, compromising. So there was no coming home with police escort or being out in the street or doing some things that
you set the reference point.
He set the reference point, and he set the bar high, and but even with that, there's a lot of parents out here that are doing some phenomenal things, and they put the great deal of effort into their children's lives, but there's still a necessity for a vehicle to make sure that we can get to that next level. And from my standpoint, it was football, and it got me to college. It got me an opportunity just to learn about what other things was available to me.
Let me ask you this, with this football and this experience, you're going into high school, and I'm pretty sure being good in football and being the jock had all the girls, correct?
No, I would never acknowledge anything. I don't.
You're going to plead the fifth on that one.
Don't quite remember those.
I like that, but because what I'm trying to get to, I want to set the stage and take you back to maybe one of your first games playing for high school, when you knew you were proficient at football. Could you remember a specific game where you really shined?
Yeah, it's funny, because as now my son, who's following that path, right, and I often express to him, I was not always the standout, sharp athlete that people knew was had the ticket. In fact, I had a number of different coaches who are still around today, who actually inspired me through their negative feedback to my performances to really get on my horse and get on the grind. So I've had coaches tell me, look, man, you're never gonna play here, and because there was another kid coming up, and I just put the work in. So it wasn't until my later years, I was a smaller kid, I was younger than everybody else. My freshman year, I'm 13, competing with guys at 16, and so it was my later years when I really started to come into to where I was, and people started to see that I actually had the talent to go to the next level. So
wow.
if I had to pick out one game, I don't know if I can really do that, but I really enjoyed my high school career.
Wow, fascinating. As the illustrious Jada Kiss once said, hard work will always beat talent if talent don't work hard.
Every time.
Yo, I'm dropping a jewel here on Score Rosenberg podcast, and just to let you know, Councilman, when you say something profound or you make a profound statement, we call it dropping a jewel. And thank you for setting that up so I can just slam that in right there.
Yeah, man.
As we get ready to move on through this walk, I'm understanding that you somehow appreciated the negatives that were given and used that as a stepping stone. Not everybody can do that.
No, what I did was I made sure I utilized that as my fuel as opposed to allowing it to get me down. I've always been a fighter, and a fighter by nature. I've been training, and even now, I've been teaching martial arts for over 20 years. So I utilize that.
Easy, no doubt.
Yeah, man. But that discipline that comes from football is all relative. I tell my son and I tell all the young people, things that you do in one aspect of life is all relative to the next. So, the discipline, the consistent drive to fight, and consistent willingness to be, go against the grain is actually where I find myself now. Because if you really knew and you studied where I am as a council person, I'm considered the odd man out, because I'm not afraid to be the lone voice, to be the only vote. And in fact, if you check my voting history, I have been voting 8 in favor, 1 against, more so than I voted with the population. So.
Wow. Score Rosenberg podcast, SQR Radio. Listen, stay tuned. We're going to take a quick break, come back, and jump into the story of a fighter, Michael Jackson, Councilman Michael Jackson. 1. SQR podcast, Score Rosenberg Radio, is coming in the second half of this wonderful powwow, for a better term of this, conversation we're having. And I'm really, fascinated by the discipline you've implemented, even as you were getting into all these sports. So you go through high school, football was your angle there. How were the grades?
It's
sorry for the curveball I just threw.
Yeah,
you right
no,
there.
no, that's not a curveball. In fact, this is the reality and the facts that I think is reflective upon our entire community. My grades weren't that great, to be honest with you, and it wasn't a matter of me not being able to do the work or not really being capable. It was the application. And, it was proven because when I went to school, I got a full scholarship. First of all, I got injured my senior year. So going into the playoffs the year before, we were undefeated state champions. And then we're rolling into the state championship again. I get injured. I blow my knee. And I think I took the SAT while I was on crutches. So at that point, the coach then comes to me and says, well, listen, man, I don't know what I'm going to do with you. Went back and looked at your grades, and you're not cutting the mustard. So, but my SAT scores, I scored through the roof. So when the college recruiters came to get me, they never even looked, because back then it was a little different situation, but they never checked my GPA. They made the assumption because I scored so high in the SAT that I was okay. So. Wow. I'm in camp in college, and they came and got me off the field. I had a 1.97 GPA. I was short like a few points, and had I not had a fight in Spanish class, or not ate so much candy in English class, I might have got a better grade. But
nice.
But it's important to understand and have a real concept of the necessity of the performance in the classroom, and that's why even now that's my solid message. My son, who is a sophomore right now, he started as a sophomore varsity, but he has a 4.3 GPA. Mm-hmm. And so my message to him is, we're Harvard bound. So if you fall anywhere short of Harvard, then you're doing all right.
Yeah. Wow. Score Rosenberg podcast here. Another jewel dropping out the basket.
Give assists.
Yeah. This is Michael Jackson, Councilman. Well. That's very profound because once you do that, you're really, as I said, consistently raising that reference point, for him. Mm-hmm. By the way, is he Michael Jackson the second?
The third. He's actually the third.
He's the third.
Yeah.
Wow, that's big. Hold on to that trade name. That's classic right there. So as you continue to grow, and I'm fascinated because the end of it is curious as could ever be in terms of where you are right now and what you're doing in Paterson. Mm-hmm. And you've lived in Paterson all your years.
Outside of a few years, I obviously I left. I went to school in Florida in Daytona Beach, and then I played professionally. I went up to Canada for a little while, lived in Atlanta. Then I came back home, and I've been here ever since, outside of maybe a couple years. So I've been here the entire time.
What was the push to get you involved?
My eyes finally was open a little under 10 years ago. I've been in business, owned a restaurant, fairly large restaurant in the city.
Well, let's not be modest about this, because this restaurant is world renowned. It's definitely made an impact in Paterson. Let's just give it some plug. What's the name of the restaurant?
It's called Jacksonville.
Big shout out to everybody who knows and to support Jacksonville. Classic restaurant, live music, muy bueno. The spot is official.
Great food, great atmosphere, good people.
Classic. As a matter of fact, I'm going to hold you to maybe having the chef come here and whip something up in our studio.
Hey, man, the chef is in the building. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Nice. We're going to dip into that a little bit more, but go ahead. What was the push to get you involved?
Well, I ventured off to open this restaurant, and obviously while I was playing years ago, we made some purchases. My family made some purchases of some property, which the building, the place where Jacksonville is located now. So the then tenant was raided for selling drugs, and we took the place over, fixed it up, figured it out.
Whoa! This place is right next door to the sheriff's place.
It's across the street.
The sheriff's place has always been there.
The sheriff's place has always been there.
So they were moving drugs.
So is drugs. Drugs has always been there. It's been relevant and prevalent.
Cool Rosenberg podcast here. A big shout out to the guy who was moving it right next to the sheriff.
Right across the street. Big shout to the guy who finally caught up with him.
Wow.
Jacksonville may not be here had it not been for that.
Sorry, Poppy. As you were saying, so you were able to purchase these properties. Continue your story.
So once he was raided, I came in and decided to revamp the place and open it up. And you know what? The people.
Whose idea was that, though?
It was mine. It was mine. I just initially someone was trying to encourage me to we should take the place over, and I really didn't feel that excited about it, and I thought that the area wouldn't be able to produce anything that was of the caliber of what I thought that I would be interested in doing. And I fought it off for a couple months, and then I said maybe he's on to something, and I opened a small place, and I thought at that time I would try to attract some of the officers in the sheriff's department. So we had a different name back then. And then after 6-7 years of doing excellent business, invested another $2 million in the place, expanded it, blew the wall out, 2-story glass atrium and live entertainment space, because that's what I was actually interested in doing. So we had a number of comedians come through there early on. In fact, that's part of the reason why Kevin Hart came and shot a show at Jacksonville. One of the young guys who performs with him. Okay. He actually made his first debut at Jacksonville. He got booed. And
serious?
Yeah, man. And now he's on television. He's doing his thing.
Wow.
So, we can hold ourselves responsible for making quite a few.
True.
You know, people
True.
open up some avenues for people to be successful.
Yeah, you know, to the information you shared, you know, and I wanted everybody and the listeners to understand that, you know, and I'm glad that you were confident in sharing your losses, you know, even, you know, with the grades and, you know, getting through college and, you know, even now. So, but fascinatingly enough, you know, you dropped on a couple of things that I wanted to go back to. Like, for instance, playing and earning a living from playing football. What was that like?
That was really nice. In fact, you know, being and mind you, I got cut from the NFL, so I wound up playing in the CFL.
Hold up. Let's go back a little bit more. What was it like trying to get into the NFL?
I mean, it could be overwhelming. It's like it's a cattle herd, so you know, on any given day, someone could be seen, and it's the same thing in any sport, or even in the entertainment business. We can talk about that later, because there's all symmetries that's there. So you're there, you know, you're at a paid combine. There's like 2,000 people there from all over the world. You got guys running 4.1s, guys running 4.2s, guys from major schools, guys from small schools. So the likelihood or the odds of you being seen or making the cut is slim to none. So
how many combines did you go to?
I went to about four combines.
Wow.
And,
because I wanted to and I want to go macro on this. So which combine do you remember the most? Like,
the combine I remember the most is actually after I was employed. So I came home to play in the Arena League, and that's during the time when the Arena League was at an all-time high. So you had the X League and then you had the Arena League. Okay. So the coach at that, I was already on the roster, and they had an open combine. So you know, I really began to see the business of the sport at that point, because you know, they're just taking the $450 from each of these guys. You get 2,000 guys paying $450. You do the math on that, and you know that one day they're clocking it, you know, knocking you over somebody over the head. So you know, you start to see the level of talent wasn't necessarily there across the board. So you know, the first question I asked the coach was, "Listen, what are we doing here? Are we live? Are we full speed? Are we, you know, should I be taking something off the ball?" And he said, "Listen, this is the pros. If you're not here, you're getting ready for a Kodak moment." Now, he said it with a lot more vulgarity, but you know, interestingly enough, you know, a lot of those guys weren't ready to actually be there. I remember hitting a guy in the face with the football
purposely.
And no, listen, when you know, if you watch the NFL, everything's timing. So you're throwing the ball before they look, and if they're not ready for it, it could be a problem. So
he got hit in what? He lost his.
Yeah, he pretty much packed it in for the rest of the day. He came out of Boston College. He had a pretty good name behind him, and he wound up playing a few years in the XFL and saw some good success. But that wasn't his day. So
thanks to Michael Jackson.
Yeah, but that was a memorable moment, man, because you know, everybody talks about that and talks about that Kodak moment.
Yeah,
when,
yeah.
You know, they take a picture of you and give you a plane ticket and put you back on the flight.
You did not make it to LA.
No,
sorry about that. So here's what's so fascinating. You're now, you know, a businessman in Paterson. You've come back home. You're making an impact. What urged you to be politically involved? Because everybody can stay on the surface, complain about what's going on,
correct,
not wanting to do anything. But, you know, it seems as if, and I'm sorry for using the word but, however, it seems as if that you wanted to make more of an impact. So what was the push for that? Or who was the catalyst for that?
Honestly, it was me. At a certain point, I became fed up. I'm always a team player. I'm willing to be a team player. And, you know, I thought it to be wonderful to be a part of a change in Paterson. So back around 2007, 2008, there was a whole new regime of black and Hispanic leadership that was coming into place.
True.
And I just wanted to be a part of that. So I was asked to support someone's campaign, and by doing so, allowing them to do a launch at my place. And it was clear they didn't have much money to start their campaign. And I said, listen, man, I just want to be a part of it. That's what Jacksonville is all about. Jacksonville is about, helping the community, being that hub for the community to, come together. So we did it, and it was a huge success. I mean, you saw a number of young, new elected officials that came into the swing of power. Mm-hmm. And after a few years, it just went silent. And, all of the things that we talked about, all of the change that was promised and all of the hope that we was looking forward to, it was nothing there.
So now you're inspired by this event, by getting involved, by sponsoring, hosting this event.
Well, honestly, I didn't get inspired then because I just wanted to be a part of the team. I wanted to be an element of or a tool that could be utilized to help these people, these individuals get elected, and then turn around and they will help the community. Mm-hmm. In fact, there was a very, very sharp brother. I'll mention his name, Brother Al Spivey. He's he works closely with the city council in Philadelphia, and they will hire him to come out to Paterson and run different people's campaigns. He ran the congressman's campaign. He ran a number of different campaigns, and he said to me then, he said, wow, man, you have what it takes. People know who you are. You got a name like Michael Jackson. I mean, it would be a shoo-in. My exact words to him was absolutely not. I'm not them, and I can't be phony, so I'm not a politician.
Hold that thought. Score Rosenberg podcast. We come back. We're going to find out why he's now defying the statement he made. Michael Jackson running for mayor, Paterson, New Jersey, 2018. We'll be back right after these messages. One. SQR podcast, Score Rosenberg Radio, coming in with our guest, Michael Jackson, Councilman Michael Jackson. Yeah, I just love saying that name. I told you before when we were having a quick powwow, I have a bad tendency of forgetting names until I've spoken to them multiple times. However, the minute you walked in and, it was like, I've never forgotten your name. I wonder why. By the way, how was that growing up in high school?
Hey,
Did you get ragged on?
That was interesting. Sometimes, but you know what? Everyone knew I was in the building, so there's Michael Jackson.
Did they ask you to do the moonwalk or?
All the time. And
did you whip it out? Could you do the moonwalk?
Back then I used to practice it, but not anymore.
Okay, nice. That's such a classic name.
That just takes us away from you asking me to do it today.
Because that's where it was going. I was like, man, back up the camera. Because, anyway, I did the worm before one of my guests. So I would have busted out my Jamaican version of the moonwalk. Anyway, so as we get ready to jump into this, this last segment of your journey, it seems as if everything that you've experienced, and behind the scenes, we talked so much about the other facets of your life, the jobs and experiences you've been on, that made you this well-rounded and very focused in wanting to make an impact. Now, we left off where you shared about the events and having those events around you, and you wanted to make an impact. You learned and what it needed to take to do that. So you decided to run for councilman. When did that decision come into play?
Well, it came into play around the 2010 mark, I believe it was 2011. it was apparent that things weren't getting any better. In fact, most of the people who actually won the positions, I felt weren't doing what they, at least making an attempt to do what they promised to do.
Oh, you mean they were being politicians?
I mean, completely. We have a whole field of politicians. We have no real community advocates. And it was a brother I seen him speak once before. His name is Senator Ray Rice.
Okay.
Ron Rice. I'm sorry. He came in to talk, and I was like, man, this is a powerful brother who is actually elected, who hasn't lost the fire. A lot of our elected officials, the fire has been doused out. They've been splashed with water, and it's unfortunate because the people actually look forward to you doing what you set out to do. And that's part of the reason why, really the main reason why I decided to run. I'm not a fan of the political landscape. I mean, there's a spotlight that's put on you that's not really comfortable. It's not the same spotlight of being, a player. If you throw a few bad passes, that goes away with the next week's game. You throw a few touchdowns, everyone forgets about those bad passes. But in the political realm, there's a great deal of scrutiny that you take on. You're constantly expected to, do certain things, and people expect for you to do, jump through hoops for their support. And unfortunately, it's certain aspects of that is necessary to get elected. But, I try to keep it as clean and straightforward as possible. And I let people know, listen, I'm not living for the position. I mean, I'm here to do a service for the community. If the community feels that I'm not the person for the job, then so be it.
So right now, and, normally on this particular podcast, I try to keep everything. I love to hear people's opinion on their political stance, and I bring up that discussion. However, I'm more fascinated with their story. But I have to now come back to that political quagmire that we're now experiencing because of the journey you're on, especially in this phase of your life. We're about to get involved and running for mayor in Paterson, and we already know the history of what's going on with Paterson. I mean, as you said before, who would be psychotic enough to want to take that challenge on? But here you are, stepping up to bat.
Yeah, one aspect you could say you have to be a glutton for punishment because, somebody who's been involved for quite some time, they said that the community is insatiable. So they're all in, there when they need you and, when you're doing something for them. But as soon as you're not, they forgot everything that you've done, all the struggles that you've gone through together.
True.
But, there's also an aspect of it of you can't be a complainer or noisemaker if you're not willing to get involved. And
Score Rosenberg Radio, SQR podcast, another jewel being dropped. Could you please say that again, my friend?
You can't be a complainer or a constant nagging wheel if you're not willing to jump in and get involved yourself.
True.
So,
on a political level, I wanted to ask you because, we all here in Paterson and we know the dynamics of the high rental market that's here. And, there's a fascinating change that's being pushed through Congress or that's been brought up right now about restructuring this whole welfare system and having people have some more accountability. And what's your thoughts on that?
Well, first and foremost, I think that, we've been looking at it from the wrong perspective or with the wrong lens on. It's one of those things, you got a camera, put the right lens on, the angle widens up for you. And when you understand that Paterson and cities like Paterson is actually, the piggy banks for other communities and other people from outside the community. And then you look at the structure and how things went through the transition. Paterson was once a city of wealth, city of gold.
True.
And during those times, it wasn't the majority of people who populate the city now. It was affluent white Americans and imports, if you will. A lot of immigrants because we did a lot of trade with the silk industry and things of that nature. But once the dynamics of the community started to change and that group began to move out, there were certain measures that had to be put in place to maintain certain controls. For example, the mandate for police that don't live in the city. Previously you had to live there, but in fact, one of our former mayors, he was a senator as well as a mayor, and during his tenure, he changed the law to where you didn't have to live in the city. So, those are one of the reasons why Paterson is a place in where everything is being extracted. You have the majority of our budget, which is police and fire. The majority of those people who are employed there don't live in the city. When you look at the academies that are coming on, the majority of them, a class of 30, you might get 2 or 3 native Pattersonians, and then everyone else, they probably have a joint apartment someplace. Yeah. But those are the facts. That's the reality we live in. So that's a large part of our municipal budget that gets sucked away. Then you have all the contracts that's being, outsourced. Garbage contract, which is outside third-party company. Road resurfacing getting done by, everyone else but people who live here. When you go out to certain communities, those people, they work and they live there. In Manhattan's a great example because they're one of the highest paid, construction workers across the world. You guy making $65 an hour holding up a stop sign. Yeah. But he lives in the Bronx. He lives in, Queens. He lives in the city.
So that money is being circulated within
somehow, either through rent, either through, support of local businesses, where your kid goes to school. When you take that money and completely extract it out of the city, where those guys don't even want to have lunch locally, how do you expect your business, population to excel?
What's so funny is the fact that you're able to dissect and see that from your lens, and catch all of that there. That's fascinating. What's also interesting is when you look on the government structure, even at a higher level right now, where things are with, my boy Trumpito and that whole circus, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's an example of people that have become kind of mellowed out by the day-to-day nonsense that they're tired of. So the fire has been dropped, has been lowered, and people don't have the same concerns. So it allowed him to to get the office, and we don't really pay attention to certain things. I think in general, the minority community in general is we are uneducated voters. We vote for somebody because their poster looks nice, or I saw my man on a show with
he's being supported by this actor or this actress.
Correct.
Got
He's
you.
playing the saxophone on late night. He was doing the electric slide at your barbecue. So now it becomes relative locally, because now you have a guy who is at everybody's barbecue. He goes to all of the he does all the fancy dances. He's doing the line dances at the electric slide and cha-cha slide.
But then he's relatable.
He's relatable, but is he the right person for the job? Does he really have the true concern of your community? Will he ensure that all of your people are going to be employed and your tax value is being lowered?
Well, listen, if my president right now, and he can't backslide, if my president right now can get in the way he got in, the guy who backslide could probably be a better president than who's in there running it right now.
Yeah.
As we get ready to wrap, there's a very fascinating question that's been, on my mind, and I wanted to ask you this. You run for mayor, you win. Are you ready for the day after?
Drinks for every no.
Nice. This is my mayor right here. He's so relatable, and he does the backslide.
And listen, we popping bottles, Heineken bottles, right?
Nice.
But on a serious note, the work is there to be done, but I don't think it's that difficult of a task once you have the true concern of the community at hand, because you don't have to play. One of the things I'm very proud about, I'm very conscientious on who I take favors from, who I take campaign contributions from. I never want to be misleading. I'm always direct, straightforward. I try to be as clean and as truthful as possible. and that means I'm not misleading the people.
No, I
so
respect that.
when you get there, when you do the work of the people, I mean, obviously, no matter what happens, we all have great intentions, and you may have some issues and have some pitfalls, but if you make sure the people are taken care of, I have two great examples. Mayor Sharp James, arguably one of the best mayors ever, in the state of New Jersey. He did some wonderful things for Newark. He helped people get employed. He brought commerce. He brought large scale business. When Newark was known as Paterson is known.
Yeah, the derelict.
They utilized certain things that they had, and they built upon that. When he, found his fall from graces, and he was coming out of being incarcerated, the people welcomed him back with open arms. They had a party, a parade for him when he was coming outside of the jail. And that's not because they were proud of whatever happened, because they acknowledge that we all make mistakes, but they were proud because when he was in office, he represented them the whole time. And the same thing held true for Marion Barry.
True.
When he came out, he was able to get reelected even after, going through all the things that he went through.
Represented the people.
That's it. Represent the people.
Wow.
So I like to consider myself the people's candidate. I like to consider myself, always having the people's best interests in mind, even when it means, taking a back seat to certain things myself.
Wow. As we get ready to close, my guests are always posed with this question, and I give you the magic wand, and there's two things you can change in this world. What would those two things be?
Wow. We had a great interview, and you got to end it with such a tough situation. No, but if I had two things, honestly, I would like to, what I think would have a huge a rippling impact on Paterson is just restore pride back into the community. Prideful people, and I don't have to tell you, because being of Jamaican descent,
bong every day, especially on Sunday.
Yeah,
rice and peas, jerk chicken.
Jerk chicken is what it is.
You're right. You are so right. Go ahead.
And when you travel to those places, my travels to Jamaica, I fell in love with the island and the people there and the pride that's there. And that same pride resonates throughout all these other places, in all the islands, the Caribbean islands. As much the similarities between the Jamaican and Trinidadian culture. Nah, man, I'm Jamaican. I'm Trinidadian, and we'll fight you over that. And so pride back into the city. I recall days of Paterson when you wore that on your shoulder as a badge of honor. I'm from Paterson, and when we went out and we were, with, even though we may have had some up the hill, down the hill struggles, when we went out and we were at other locations, it became a Paterson thing.
Wow.
And now I think that pride has been lost. I think that, you can often see Paterson people talking more harshly about the city than outside people. And if you project yourself in such a light, then how should anyone else view you?
Another jewel as we get ready to close here. Wow,
full of jewels tonight,
that was very profound.
I'll be loaded up with some.
That was very profound. Your second wish with that magic wand. The first one was to restore pride into Paterson, New Jersey. The second thing to do with that magic wand.
Second wish. I would not like to project some selfish image of, but maybe I think I might have to do something selfishly, man.
Go in.
Utilize that second wish to be able to, after things are taken care of well here, to go back to do what I used to do, travel the world, and take care of my family in a whole nother light. I think that because of this last few years, the journey that I've been on, my children haven't had the opportunities that I've had to travel, see other things, see other places. Living life, man. Just living life.
Wow. As long as you weren't going to ask for two more wishes, you're good to go. Score Rosenberg Podcast. Thank you so much, Councilman Michael Jackson. Thank you so much for dropping in and just sharing, your story, your vision. Guys, this is going to be on our SoundCloud. It's going to be up on Podbean, Mixcloud. You can catch us on our YouTube channel, SQR Podcast on YouTube. Stay tuned. We're having a lot of fun. There's a lot of stuff coming up this year. 2018, guys, are going to be phenomenal. Once again, thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to visiting and hitting this kitchen with the chef and maybe bringing some smoked apple jerk chicken to the table.
Listen, stay focused, guys. This is going to be real. We're going to have a band here. We're going to keep it moving. SQR Podcast.
Yeah, man.
Bro, there's money to be made. I'm on the road to the riches. You in another lane. I'm all alone at the bar. Take